Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Ammar, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Scott Martinez, the founder and CEO of B2B Catalyst, a firm that specializes in helping B2B companies accelerate growth through high-impact sales and marketing strategies. Scott brings a wealth of experience in SaaS, demand gen, and scaling revenue operations for both startups and established businesses. Scott, welcome to Founders Future.
Thanks, man. How you doing?
Fantastic. How are you?
Good weekend. We've pivoted our business over the last year, and it feels like we're finally starting to stick the landing on that pivot, which is really good.
I'm excited to dive into that. But before we do, I want to take things back to before you started B2B Catalyst, just to give the listeners more background. So walk me through, before you started the company, what were you doing beforehand? And then what was the motivation to start the company?
If you really want to take it back, I did ministry, just different forms of ministry for 4 or 5 years in college, a mixture of working with college students from like 2010 to 2015, did a little bit of homeless ministry. And I was really passionate about trying to change the world. And the more I got really interested in nonprofits and poverty alleviation, and what I realized over time was that poverty alleviation, like the only sustainable way to do it is a business. Like if you look at, in fact, like any relief-oriented nonprofit where anytime you sustain giving people something past like a pretty short window post disaster, it actually creates this unhealthy dependency. And so what I realized is like most long-term poverty alleviation nonprofits were effectively startup incubators. So I got really fascinated with business because I was like, if you think about what profit actually is, it's like you have inputs that create more output than you bring into it, which is really interesting. And the ingenuity of the founder and the team is what creates that profit delta in a healthy company. So I got really interested in that, dove into a marketing agency right out of college. I just needed a job, saw that grow, got introduced to a lot of business system concepts, read a bunch of books, tried to start my first business, coaching business, failed. I got baptized in the online marketing space and failed, started working at a software company. 8 weeks later, I was the newest business development person, the appointment setter. And then 8 weeks later, my boss quit, and I basically took over managing all the BDRs, the appointment setters who'd been there longer than me, and doing CRM management. This was 7, 8 years ago. So it was a very fast learning curve. And I had to figure out, like, I'd never used a CRM before, and I never had an official sales job outside of retail before. So I kind of had to figure out very quickly, hey, what is sales and marketing? How do you make it scalable? How do you make it systematic? I'd taken a Scott Oldford course, which kind of helped give me a leg up, and a Ryan Dice course. So I knew some things about different types of marketing, which was really helpful, but I had a lot to learn. And so then after that, I left, I got fired actually, helped some friends scale a construction business from 15K a month to 100K a month. Then I started working marketing agencies. And I really was enamored with the idea when I founded B2B Catalyst of business systems. I saw the power of having good systems to scale, seemed like a magic bullet. And I helped a couple marketing agencies double their MRR without hiring any additional employees.
Wow.
And then I did that for a couple of companies, got delivered some results over a 3-4 month period, and then canceled, stopped working with them. And then I started talking to other companies. They're like, this is cool, dude, but I like the idea, the concept of this, but I need leads. So I got into lead gen for 5-6 years. And what I realized, I was working with a lot of small B2B companies, IT companies, but consultants, marketing agencies, all the whole works, like service providers, basically. And what I realized with all of them was like, wow, most of these guys have no sales process, no value proposition, no target market. Like they know theoretically what they can do, but effectively they put together a website I do marketing. Marketing is good.
They're not communicating it in a way that actually converts.
And they didn't know who was actually what actually a good customer looked like. So I was doing LinkedIn automation and email for them, and that worked to a degree, but it didn't really, the ones that succeeded had a really good offer, and the ones that didn't succeed didn't. And so it was one of those things where it's not easy. I started getting under the evolution of the business as I was like, all right, I need to go to companies that are a little bit more mature. So then I worked with some ecom tech, some companies, and I shifted more from LinkedIn automation, which was getting cracked. There were some crackdowns more to high volume email.
Yeah.
And then I came in sort of as this high volume email expert. I drove 700 interested leads across three or four startups. And then the most frustrating part with that was almost none of that converted to revenue. And so that's where I started pivoting into the current role. That was probably about 2 years ago. So I drove all this revenue. And by this point, I had years and years of lead gen experience. I'd seen a lot of things not work, some success, some stuff not work. A lot of what I ended up doing was I effectively ended up coaching founders week to week on what was their actual value proposition and targeting. And then I finally started figuring out this stuff. And then I started seeing these other breakdowns where founders would book meetings. I'd get a bunch of leads. Very few of the leads would turn into meetings because the sales rep follow-up was really bad. And then when they get on calls, where there would just be really ineffective sales process, 45-minute pitches, very little discovery, poor next steps. And I was just like, the problem was I was the email guy. And so they're like, no, we got the rest. And I was like, I don't think you do. But they didn't want to, or in some cases, it was product offerings, like really low repurchase rate. It wasn't, the service offerings needed to be tweaked. And so the challenge was like, I came in as the email guy. And as long as I was the email guy, that positioning meant I couldn't solve the real problems in their business. So I started positioning more on what you could call, it's more technical in SaaS, but you could call go-to-market architecture, which is like, what systems do you need to have in place to scale, of which outbound is one of the more consistent, predictable motions to scale. And that's where things really started to hit traction over the last year. And the challenge is, it's okay, we can build those systems, and what you quickly find out is building systems is at best 30% of success, because it also requires culture change. It requires a lot of change management. And then you can build a system, but that has to work, especially if you're working with an existing sales team.
Yeah.
Especially if that's an account-based sales motion where, there are motions where $30,000 is frankly a tiny deal, not even worth really devoting much sales time to. I've worked with customers where, like, one of our longer running customers now, for them, 200K is a land deal. That is an initial land deal they expect to expand that, and a lot of their customers are north of $1 million in revenue.
I see.
When you're dealing with go-to-market systems for someone like that, it's just a completely other level of complexity. And so that's where we are today, is we're working with these software companies, looking at a couple service providers, but we're working with these people that have these really complex, really high value products, and they want predictable revenue, but they can't just build a list and throw it into instantly. That's never going to fly. They've actually, in many cases, they've tried that and it's worked poorly. I've a prospect that has done 15 different tests on instantly, and all of them have failed.
What do you think that problem was? Is it the list that they're getting? Is it the deal size just isn't well with email? Like, I'm confused why it didn't work for them.
That's a good question.
Maybe before, as you think through that, sorry, go for it.
So the thing is, we shifted as email deliverability got a lot harder over the last year. We shifted from email first to phone first. And what I realized when I actually had someone cold calling leads, I had no idea how shitty my lists were. Like the thing is, if it costs you a fraction of a cent to email someone, you don't really ever take your list quality seriously.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is you end up with actually really terrible list segments What ends up happening is in some of these markets, like where I built a deck to present to the CEO on this, there's dozens of subsegments, and there's dozens of subsegments. We have some products. The typical product in one of our customers' category takes 3 years to implement, not buy, just to deploy it. And
Wow.
so, in that sort of situation where the average product takes 3 years to deploy, the odds that you email someone randomly and they're actually ready to buy your solution, like you can do some sort of offer, but that doesn't necessarily solve for it either because a lot of those people might not be in market. And even if you do, they are willing to talk to you, they may not. It's going to take a lot of sales rep effort to convert into a real opportunity. So I think the short answer is that going high volume is surprisingly corrosive at
Mm,
getting you to think in a specific and detailed way about who your actual audience is and
mm,
what their value proposition is. And
interesting.
it leads to a mindset like I know because I used to do this. Like you just want to pull a general TAM list and you want to hammer the TAM and you want to see if you can get a quick win. And that just if you're dealing with something remotely complex, that's just an epic way to fail. Like the reality is the TAM spin. And even with Clay, a lot of that I did some of Clay's initial outbound 2 years ago before Eric Noslowski took over. Most Clay agencies are still spamming the TAM, basically. They aren't really thinking through what the market segments are, what the buyer personas are, what the value propositions are. And building one offer doesn't count. Because in the customers we have, there are anywhere from 5 to 25 different sub-market segments if you count both company
Yep.
segment and contact segment. And what that means is if you don't think of that through, if you don't, and obviously you can't boil the ocean, you can't do 15 at once, you really can win at one segment, 1%
Yeah.
of the time, usually, maybe two, you can test two or three.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, what ends up happening is you gloss it over. And like for most of the companies we're talking to, they do a high volume email motion. It's got an 80-90% chance of failure. And people like it. Everyone tries it because the promise of, hey, maybe high volume email or fully automated outreach will work. That sure, but the level of work it takes to like really segment your market and
Yeah.
really map out good value propositions for all the segments is pretty high. And if you're in it's very uncomfortable. It was initially very uncomfortable for me because I was so used to immediately wanting to go to volume and go into outreach that I had a really hard time with it. And so now I'm in this situation where it's actually no, that doesn't work in what we're trying to do. And that I don't think that's just a good habit, period. It's like it pays to be intentional. And that is where I found a lot more consistency recently is if you do the work up front to really think through who your market is, really look at your customer base, really think about why they buy and how their life is better, not what how their life is better from your using your solution, not what your product does. That pays off and you can get a lot more consistent results.
That makes a lot of sense. So walk us through today. You mentioned SaaS providers, you mentioned service providers. It sounds like right now you're helping them that what you really pivoted into was more of the go-to-market architecture. Is that
And yeah, and we still do the execution
got it?
piece too, but we do that more with alongside sales teams,
Mm, I
not
see.
necessarily, yeah,
How do you generate your leads? So when you're looking to acquire more
it's
content,
all content right now.
so where is that going out? Is that LinkedIn? Is that
Like
Instagram?
right now it's LinkedIn. I had a post go viral 2 years ago, and ever since then, I picked up 7,000 followers in a month.
Wow. Okay.
And so ever since, and then I've had a few posts go viral since then. And so ever since that, then that's been the primary. And then the other interesting thing is like when I start giving this content about how nuanced go-to-market architecture is and all the other facets that a lot of people intuitively know is complex but don't think about,
Yep.
I started having other service providers refer me in.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So if is the content enough to fill your pipeline? Because I know a lot of people try to use organic, but unless they have a certain reach, it's difficult to make sure it's consistent flow. I'm curious your perspective and what your experience has been with that.
If I'm consistent at doing thoughtful posts, yeah. that is enough. So the thing to understand is like our services are start at 10K a month.
Got it.
And so if I get a couple late stage opportunity, if I get a couple opportunities, that's 20K in MRR for
Yeah.
us.
And is that like 10K a month and we work together for 3 months, 6 months? Is it just a retainer depending on how long the project?
We're playing with that model. Right now we're shooting for it's typically a 90 day engagement starting on a quarterly auto renewal model.
Got it. Okay. And then what does the sales process look like for a deal of that size? Is it multiple follow-ups? Like typically how long is the sales
It's
cycle?
not it's not really about the length
Interesting.
of the sales. Now, it is a lot of calls.
Got it.
I have a deal cycle. It's a lot of calls and it basically verges into consulting. Like I
Mm,
have a client that I'm pitching we're likely going to come in at 15K a month, maybe more. I have I got referred in by someone we'd worked with at a previous company. I did a sort of initial intro call where we exchanged approach. The stakeholder sent over like probably 10 or 15 documents from like their existing sales and marketing playbooks. And I did an hour-long deep dive into their systems and I did a lot of analysis. That's what we found is like people are paying for expertise. And so for us, that's where we help differentiate is we look at their existing sales and marketing playbooks and we get them to we start asking questions no one has really asked.
mm,
And so I'm starting to develop a more structured audit process. You really effectively, I'm auditing their go-to-market architecture today. And I'm looking at metrics benchmarks where I'm just like, hey, what's your reply rate? What's your connect rate? What does that tell us about your market? How are your systems set up? Those sorts of things.
got it. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I'm curious now that you've pivoted, when you think of the next, let's say 1 to 2 years, what are the targets that you're aiming for? What are the milestones? Walk me through that.
But 5 million in ARR. And
Okay.
the big gap that we have to solve so we have, I'd say, two or three big gaps to solve. First is really retention. And the hard part at our level about retention is like our business model is effectively 4 or 5 agencies or service businesses stuck together. That's the whole model because that's the hard part. This is why outbound agencies or sales coaches fall down is you can come in with a solution, but when it ends up happening is if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And so, like an agency will come in and they're like, I think I can solve this. But the reality is actually you have a really complicated target account list. So
Mm,
for one of those customers I talked about with those 200K land deals, one of their BDRs booked 2 meetings last Friday. And remember that these opportunities are massive. We spent essentially 6 months thoroughly mapping their market and building out all these different custom intent signals in Clay. We finally got that. One of the BDRs called into one of those top tier accounts. Suddenly
cool.
meetings can start getting booked. And so that's the nature of the beast for us is it's a little different. So I think the first problem that we're actually going to solve is actually an alignment problem, which is like we're going to have to like I'm effectively acting as like a VP of go-to-market architecture for clients, which is, hey, what is the next big thing you need to be changing in your
I
go-to-market
see.
systems and changing that. And that requires a level of alignment and reporting. Like I've never been a VP before.
Yeah.
And that requires a lot of reporting that executives are expecting. And I didn't know how to deliver. So that's the first thing. And then once we have that, then the next thing is, okay, we have a great core team now. We're going to need to create scalability in the world of outbound, in the world of RevOps, in the world of go-to-market engineering, product marketing, demand gen, all those areas.
I see.
It's not going to be just like, hey, I need a person to build clay tables and write email copies. I need someone with a lot of RevOps experience, and I need someone who knows how to do very detailed account qualification playbooks or LinkedIn playbooks or email playbooks, things like that. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So that's the scenario here.
Yeah.
And then along with that is we're going to need to start building Like I've been doing a lot of the account engagement myself because it's so technical and there's been this stuff to learn. So once I have that delegated and the systems more delegated, I think it's going to be a slow task of outsourcing a lot of the sales process. Like
Yeah.
realistically, the only person that could probably actually execute, like I might be able to have an account executive, but the only person who could actually execute the lion's share of the sales process I would need a VP level person. Like I could have someone that's sort of account executive level facilitating the interactions and doing some of the audits, but you're going to need someone VP level on the call or our service quality is not going to be there because and actually will damage the service delivery too because a lot of what you're doing in our solution is we are doing our first planning cycle with you during our sales process. We call that wrong,
Yeah.
then we're going to fail and we're going to look like idiots. So that's I think those are I think going to be the big those are I think going to be the big milestones
Yeah.
on the
That,
way
that
to
makes a
5
lot of
and
sense.
10 million.
Walk me through, first off, what is the best way for people to reach out
LinkedIn.
to you to work with you?
LinkedIn. Yeah.
So Scott Martinez on LinkedIn.
Yeah. As far as I know, I'm the only Scott Martinez on LinkedIn.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
What would you have told yourself before you started this company? Now that you've been doing this for a while and you've had to pivot, what advice would you give yourself when you were first starting off? So basically, what would you tell somebody thinking about starting something similar?
Building the company the way I built it, I am aware of the more transactional or the more templated model. And I always knew deep down I didn't want to do that. I think what I tell myself is like when we cracked 80K a month earlier this year, it was way more work than I thought it was going to be. So what I would first thing I tell myself is, look, early on, you're not going to be able to work smart. You're going to have to work hard to do a lot of work to figure out how to work smart.
Okay.
So embrace the grind up front. And for me, building the kind of business I wanted to build, I wasn't necessarily optimizing for money. I wanted to solve a really big problem for a lot of people. Like there are many easier ways to make money than what I've done today.
Yeah.
I think it's got a much longer tail and it's got more sustainability long term, and so I'm happy with it. But the other thing I tell myself is just be patient. It's mastering the kind of skills you want to master is going to take a very long time. Without the 7 years of experience and like tons, like I now part of the reason I am where I am now is like I have worked in so many different industries, so many different kinds of services, targeting so many different kinds of products that
Yeah.
I can go into a client and it usually takes me 5 or 10 minutes to get oriented to what their go-to-market strategy is.
Yeah.
And then I can usually start telling them problems that they're having. That's a very long learning curve. And I think what I would, if I was talking to myself, I would say, hey, just be patient, work hard, find a way to have balance. I was probably not working hard enough. I know I wasn't working hard enough. And it's like, I just have to embrace, you're going to have to focus. You're going to have to master this. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to look balanced. You can find a sustainable way to do that. And so that'd be the main thing I tell myself is, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Scott, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
So that wraps up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to reach out to Scott Martinez on LinkedIn. That's Martinis on LinkedIn. B2B Catalyst is the company name. And if you are a business owner, specifically a coach, consultant, or an agency owner, and you're really looking to scale your business and you want to enhance your sales and marketing efforts, visit closers.io to hop on a call with our team and discover how we were able to go from zero to $30 million in less than 3 years. Until then, keep on climbing.